Sorry. All right, everyone. What's up? Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Teeth. Today we have Dr. Roshan Kalra. Roshan, if you don't mind, just telling us about a little about yourself, where you went to dental school, what you're doing now, and we could just go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. My name is Roshan Kalra. I graduated dental school from Nova Southeastern in Fort Lauderdale in 2017. Got an opportunity to open up a practice right out of school, so I opened up a Comfort Dental location here and moved to Oklahoma all the way from Florida, from
Oh,
South
wow.
Florida to Oklahoma,
Nice.
from beautiful beaches to landlocked state.
Right.
But I did it with the idea that I had this opportunity to open up a practice right out of school. Didn't know if I didn't do it, I would have always felt like, what if? So
For
I
sure.
knew that I was young enough and that even if I made a mistake, I could recover. And
Right.
so
Right.
that happened in 2017, opened up my office in October of 2017, practiced full-time dentistry and did full-time investing in real estate also. So I was working anywhere between 60 to 80, 85 hours a week. And then
Wow.
in 2023, I was able to sell my practice and fully exit out of clinical dentistry. Now,
Wow.
yeah, now my entire income comes from real estate.
Nice. So, what got you into that field of real estate? You opened a practice, and there's enough struggles as it is learning how to run a business. What kind of led you into also delving into real estate?
I didn't actually know that I wanted to exit dentistry until a couple years into the grind, pun
Mhm.
intended.
Right.
Uh, I didn't know I wanted to exit dentistry so early on. I just knew that I wanted financial freedom. I wanted the ability to travel the world.
Right.
I wanted to be able to do what I wanted to do on my own terms, hang out with whoever I wanted to hang out with.
Right.
And so I started looking in my fourth year of dental school. I started reading just about every book on retirement, finance, strategies, investing strategies I could get my hands on. And
Right.
ultimately, what it came down to is you have the traditional method, which definitely works, which is over a long period of time, be good about your savings rate, put it into an index fund, S&P 500 index fund,
Right.
let it compound for 20, 30 years. And with the dental income, you should definitely have millions in the bank
Right.
by the time you're 50 years old,
Sure.
if you do it right. And so there was that. And then the other option that I was looking into was real estate. And what got me interested in real estate was I set out a goal for myself that I wanted to achieve financial freedom in 10 years or less. And the only way to do it with that kind of compressed timeline and not making, I wasn't ever making $1 million a year as a dentist. So I
Right.
didn't have a ridiculous dental income.
Sure.
The only way to do it, to scale it and be predictable, was real estate investing. So then
Right.
eventually decided that was the way, and I got really lucky. I joined my Comfort Dental office. I opened my Comfort Dental office because of my partner. If he was in Alaska, I would have been in Alaska. It
Right.
just so happened that Oklahoma is an excellent market for real estate.
Right.
Started investing, and the rest is history.
Awesome. So how did it work? Did you get into the realty, like brokerage side of it, or was it just like flip houses? How'd you transition into that?
Yeah, I'm a pure investor. I am not a trader of one job for another job. So I don't
Okay.
work for anyone else. I do not list houses. I don't sell houses for anybody else. I'm not a broker or a realtor. In fact,
Sure.
I'm still not a broker or realtor. I
Right.
just bought houses that were good investments
Right.
and started doing that and just kept on compounding
Right.
that method.
Where or do most of your real estate purchases, are they like distressed houses, or most of them are like just like easy flips?
Yeah, I love that you asked that because I didn't even know what a distressed house was in my second year of dental school. So I think it's fantastic that you already know that term. In the beginning, and for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, a distressed house is a house that is either the seller is distressed, which means that they need to sell quickly, usually under market value in return for selling quickly. So you're getting a deal per se,
Right.
or it's they're distressed because it needs a lot of work, it needs a lot of fixes, has a lot of repairs that need to happen. And so I started my path by buying houses that were ready to go, either rented or ready to go.
Right.
And then found out later on that if I bought distressed houses, I could make my money go way further. And in fact, you can actually infinitely buy houses if you do it the right method by buying a distressed house, increasing the value by fixing it up,
Right.
and then refinancing against the increased value.
Nice. So did you have like were your resources that's pretty cool like how you were able to just transit I'm sure it wasn't a totally smooth transition for you to go from
Oh no, heck no! It was.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it was. I really had a second full time job, which was investing in real estate, not working for anyone
Right.
else, but like finding deals, managing contractors, managing property managers,
Right.
going to the courthouse to evict people. There were all sorts of obstacles and hurdles and things that had to be taken care of
For sure. Hmm.
during that time. So for
Right.
sure, yeah, it was not a smooth
Yeah,
sailing
I can
process.
imagine. Yeah. Did
Uh,
you have mentors on the way or was it just one man shop doing it all?
I read a lot of books and I found people who were in places that I wanted to be at and
Right.
asked them, hey, what can I do to earn an hour of your time? Took them out to lunch, dinner, whatever. Basically pelted them with questions, just trying to absorb as much as I could.
Right.
And then I think one thing that differentiates me from a lot of other people is I didn't hesitate to jump in. I felt like I knew enough. And did I know everything? Absolutely not. But I knew enough to at least buy the house.
Right.
And, some were lessons and some were home runs.
Right. Hmm. So, whenever you're realizing your shift away from clinical dentistry, what made you realize, oh, this is 100% the path I want to take? Was it just one successful flip? Did you have initially, and then you ended up hitting gold and then going from there? Like, was that a tough decision for you to switch out of clinical dentistry?
So my goal was always financial freedom, which to me was replacing my dental income. And so I was getting closer and closer to replacing my dental income over time. And the closer I got, the more disillusioned I got with dentistry. I mean, it's certainly a wonderful career. Don't let anyone hear my words and think that I'm poo pooing all over dentistry. You get to help people, you get paid exceptionally well, but anyone who says it's not hard on your back, it's not hard on your mental
Right.
state is out of their mind. It's
Right.
absolutely hard on your body. It's hard on your mental state.
Right.
Managing staff can be difficult. Managing a business is its own thing.
Right.
And so you get into those kinds of aspects, and I'm on one side making money a lot easier than another side, but every day I'm going into the dental chair and dealing with insurances and you guys as dental students have to deal with this yet, but when you have denied claims, man, they really just suck out of you because you already did the work at that point. And even if you sometimes will send it into insurance to be like, hey, give me a pre-authorization, they get a pre-authorization, do the work, and then the claim gets denied. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
insane.
it is just it ultimately came down to what is my ideal lifestyle, and if I'm able to earn the same money or now currently earn even more money than what dentistry was providing me, why wouldn't I take the easier route?
For sure. Hmm. 100%. I like the fact that you brought up the insurance claims and stuff. We haven't yet started clinic, but I'm sure everyone, all the upperclassmen seem to complain, all the dentists. So I'm sure we'll be getting the firsthand experience next year. But I was just curious. So nowadays, what does the majority of your portfolio look like in terms of real estate?
And it's funny, what kind of allowed me to get to the point of being able to transition out of dentistry is now, by and large, a very small part of my portfolio. I got up to, I don't know, 55, 57 doors or units of residential housing. And then now I've transitioned more to the commercial world. And so have 5 commercial buildings. I do flips. I do quite a bit of stuff, but overall portfolio, the value, not I'm not saying my net worth because I have partners and everything like that, but
Right.
look at my overall portfolio. Now the value is over 30 million.
Nice.
All
Wow. What inspired
of
you?
that in commercial.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, that's what I was about to say. What kind of inspired you to go the commercial route? Was that always the goal, or is it harder? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I had one call with a buddy, and he was doing well in commercial. And like I said, I guess I'm dangerous enough to know enough to jump in.
Right.
Now I preach others to be a little bit more cautious than I was in commercial because,
Fair.
when you're dealing with a problem in a house, a single family house, at least in Oklahoma, just about any problem can be fixed with an extra 20 grand.
Right.
In commercial, that's not the case. You might need an extra 200, 400, 600 grand.
Right.
And so I had a conversation with a buddy of mine. He told me the benefits of commercial, started looking into it, and jumped in. And within just a little over 2 years, 2 years and 3 months with partners, I bought about $20 million of commercial. And
Nice.
again, it became if I can make more or same money from commercial with way less work than
Right.
single families, and what was
Sure.
doing getting me transition me out of dentistry. I'm always going for a return on time.
Right.
I think
Right.
talk about return on investment, the ROI,
Right. Hmm.
and I think that's level one. Level two then becomes return on equity, ROE, and it means maybe I only put in, let's say I put in 50 grand to buy a $250,000 house,
Right.
and I'm earning, let's say, $5,000. Well, that's a return on investment of 10%. I earn 5,000 on a 50 grand down payment.
Right.
But if that $250,000 house has now become 450, just obviously that's not the case,
Right.
but let's say it did,
Hmm.
you have the 50 grand that you put down as equity plus the additional $200,000 of equity. So now you have 250K of equity that's earning you only $5,000. So then ROE, even though your ROI is still 10% or more, your ROE is significantly
Right.
lower. That tells you, hey, I need to sell this asset, move it into something that gives me a better ROE.
Right.
That's level two. Level three then becomes ROT, return on time. And so now it's like, all right, I don't actually care so much about ROI and ROE. Like, I'm good because my expenses, my lifestyle, everything is
It's
basically
comfortable.
covered. But now what I want to do is maximize the amount of money I make with the minimal amount of effort and time. And so
Right.
that's where commercial really stuck out for me, is because it takes way
Yeah.
less time in comparison than single family houses.
That makes Hmm. perfect sense. And I assume that initially you were going into it on mainly an ROI and then potentially a little bit of ROE, and you've transitioned into ROT.
That's exactly right. Yeah, ROI was what allowed me to have my metrics on whether I bought a house or not. And so if it met my cash on cash standards, then I would pull the trigger. And
Right.
then eventually, between 2020 and 2023, we had this huge jump in values, and now they're cooling off a little bit, but they're
Right.
still inflated compared to 2020. And during that
Hmm.
time, now my ROE went down. Instead of selling my assets, I did huge refinances. So I
I see.
refinanced off of the new higher value, took that money and reinvested that money. And so
Right.
that's really where I went from, okay, I got my ROE was too high, or too low rather. I refinanced it, and now my ROE is again back to normal. It's good, but
Right.
now I have this huge amount of money. What can I do with it to increase my ROT, my return on time?
Yeah, that makes sense. Roshan, I got a kind of a controversial, maybe to some people, topic, and it sounds like you're pretty risk averse. So I want to ask, what's your take on like debt? I know you're in real estate, and real estate is a
Say
very
risk
like, debt
averse.
field.
I think this is the first time I've ever been called risk averse. I think most people think I'm way too risky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have over $20 million of debt. So I think most people think that I have way too much risk
Okay.
tolerance.
Yeah.
I think that there is certainly, I actually had a big mindset shift recently in the last year, and it was because of an issue on a commercial property
Sure.
where this would be an issue that could cost upwards of $2 million. And so now I've realized, okay, debt has allowed me to grow where I wanted to grow.
Right.
And I'm 32 right now, and my goal was by the age of 40 to have an asset, like a portfolio of assets worth 100 million. Not again, not net worth, just the value, right? So it would be like 100 million of assets against maybe 80 million of debt.
Right.
But when I realized, hey, we're dealing with something that could cause a loss of a million, 2 million plus, I had a mindset shift where I'm like, all right, I've grown enough. I have plenty of assets. Now I'm going to focus the next 8 years on paying down debt. So absolutely, I think there's a such thing as good debt and bad debt.
Right.
Good debt gives you income. Bad debt loses you money.
Right.
Right.
But then once you reach a certain point, it is, I think, in my eyes at least, it's beneficial to start thinking about, okay, even though it may not be the biggest ROI,
Sure.
I to be able to get rid of my debt so I can sleep easier at night and have nothing happen where if I lose $1 million or $2 million, like where it's gonna hurt, it's gonna suck. There's no doubt about it. But
Right.
I'm not gonna be like having seriously dark thoughts because of it.
Fair
Hmm.
enough. Yeah, that makes sense. So, like early on in your game, did you leverage your dental income right out of school to get into real estate, or did you take on private loans per se, or use another financing route to delve into real estate?
Man, you've done your research on these topics, I'm assuming. Like, have you
Curious.
read books on real estate or people?
My cousin, he's big in real estate, big on like flipping. Not He's an agent too, but he's more on like the development side. So I just honestly I talk and listen to him. So I got to give him credit for the little bit of what I have. Also think
Yeah,
Yeah, he's
cool investment.
his cousin's actually my neighbor, so I've known him and his cousin for like over 15 years. But yeah, that guy has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to real estate.
that's pretty cool. To answer your question, I took on bank debt when I bought properties. And then actually, I made partnerships, which allowed my partners to put in the money versus me putting in the money.
Right.
I set it up where they would put the money up front. They would put the money up front, but then I would pay them back over time my portion of the down payment. So let's say a down payment was 20 grand,
Sure.
uh, and let's say it was me and one partner. Technically, it should have been 10 grand him and 10 grand me, but he's putting the full 20 grand. So he puts the full 20 grand, I do all the work, and I'll pay him the 10 grand back over time, over 5 years. And so what I did was I started by taking all of my dental income, and every time I made 20 grand, 25 grand, I would take that, use it as a down payment for another house. Then I started getting into the partnership model where now I get someone else to put the down payments and I'll trade all the work and do the sweat equity per se. Not like construction, like I don't
Yeah.
know which side of the hammer hits the nail, like not that, but
Fair.
the work in terms of
Right.
handling the contractor, handling the property managers, finding the house, figuring out the funding in terms of bank loans, all of that kind of higher level stuff I handled. And so it allowed me to scale. And the same thing I did with commercial. And so what that's allowed me to do is be highly leveraged, but also be no money down for my entire portfolio.
Nice.
Right. So I'm not as in tune with real estate as Victor is, and I'm sure some of our listeners are feeling the same way. So could you provide an example, possibly, of what an ideal investment for you into real estate looks like?
Sure. There's so many different asset classes. So, an asset class is basically, are we talking about a single family house? Are we talking about an apartment complex? Are we talking about a commercial building? Are we talking about, now I act as a bank, so I actually lend money to other people to do fix and flips. All of those have different ideals. Which one are you specifically referring to?
I feel like I want to answer this for him. I feel like someone that is just getting out of dental school and wants to get into real estate. Would you say
Yeah.
Yeah.
what you were thinking, Saad?
Yeah, definitely.
So there's two ways to think about this. You could have someone specifically. This is going to be for someone getting out of dental school. I talk and teach to a lot of dentists, both right out of dental school as well as 20, 30 years into their career. Um, so someone getting out of dental school, you have two options. One, you generally will have an associateship. You generally have a contract and a salary off of which you could buy an investment property that you don't live in, and they banks will look at what's called a debt to income ratio. And so they're going to make sure that with your student loan debt and now with this new mortgage that you're going to owe, you're still able to cover your expenses. And you can buy a house in your name without living in it for 20% down doing it that method. One is very hard to find nowadays because the price of real estate is so inflated and so expensive compared to what you can get it rented for. Generally, you buy a nice house and let's say you rent it out for 2,500 bucks, your mortgage might be 3,200. So you're actually negative cash flow. So that what I'm going to say, the ideal, that is almost never the case right now, although it used to be the case and potentially could be the case in the future. Looking for a solid amount of cash flow. Let's say what I always tell people is determine your idea of what return you want. So let's say it's 8% or 10% or 12%, doesn't matter. What you're going to look for is that your rent, subtract out your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, that's called PITI, and subtract out four other things that most people don't do. One is property management, even if you self-manage. Another one is going to be maintenance, even if it's perfect condition. Another one is called capital expenditures, and I'll explain that in a second. And the last one is vacancy, even if it's 100% rented. The reason you have a property management expense allocated. So my formula is going to be I want 12% return, which is rent minus your PITI minus, and I put 28% of rent to cover for property management, maintenance, capex, and vacancy. The reason why you're going to include property management, regardless of whether you're self-managing or not, is the idea of real estate is to have freedom. And you get freedom if you're managing this house. Maybe in the beginning you do. I managed the first 15 houses until finally my time was worth more than what I would have to pay a manager.
Right.
But eventually, the point of this is freedom, right? We're not investing in real estate because we want to deal with problems in real estate and landlording issues. We're doing it because we want freedom.
Right.
So you eventually, even if you don't have it right now, will want a manager. So you have to allocate some expenses for that. Managers are generally 8 to 10%.
Right.
Then maintenance issues. Even if you have a brand new house, there are maintenance issues that are going to happen. Sure, over time, maybe it's not as much, but you're still going to have to deal with maintenance. And so if you're not expensing for that in your formula, when it happens, you may actually find out after all is said and done that you didn't actually make any money. So you want to expense for maintenance. CapEx, which is capital expenditures, those are big ticket items like roof, HVAC or AC system, foundation, flooring, things that don't really get replaced all that often. But when they do get replaced, it's a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 expense.
Right.
For that in the beginning, you start allocating for that as soon as you buy it. So that way, in 5 years, when you do deal with that problem, it's not coming out of your cash flow. You already had it saved up.
And
Almost
like a rainy day fund.
And the last one is vacancy, because no matter how good your house is, there is going to be a moment when you have vacancy. And so I put 5%, you put 5% away for vacancy. So that way, you have it rented for, let's say, 2 or 3 years, and then suddenly you have 2 or 3 months of vacancy because you have to repair the normal wear and tear of someone being in there for a couple of years. And then you have to relist it on the market. Then you have to get a new tenant in there. Easily can be 2 to 3 months. Well, now you're not losing cash flow either because you saved away for that. So in my formula, I do 8% for management, 7.5% for maintenance, 7.5% for capex, and 5% for vacancy. But it's extremely location specific. What I tell you doesn't matter to anyone else. All I'm saying is, if you want to find your ideal number, you got to figure out first, what is your return that you want? 8%, 6%, 10%, 12%, whatever return you want. Then allocate, okay, what's rent? Subtract out PITI, and then also variable expenses that may happen in the future or fixed expenses like property management. Things like that will allow you to get into a quote unquote ideal investment.
Yeah.
The second one, as a new grad, is use a doctor loan, which will allow you to be 0% down, get into a house that would make money, live in there for a year, move out, and now you can rent that house. So you're basically buying a house that will future be a rental. You get to do it with 0% down because there's doctor loans that allow that. And then you have to only live in there for a year. After a year, you get to move out and rent it out. Now, when you're 100% leverage, chances are you aren't going to cash flow. But if I told you, Victor or Saad, if I told you guys, hey, you got into this house for no money down, it's a $300,000 house. It's only going to break even for the next 20 years or 30 years. But at the end of 30 years, that $300,000 house is worth $700,000 or $800,000, and you
Hmm.
literally paid nothing for it. I
Right.
mean, imagine if you do that as many times as you can, which is 10 times.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's a
So there's no reason why someone, especially a new grad, shouldn't be able to start figuring out the plans to have a $3 to $5 million real estate portfolio, even with little to no money down.
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well, I really appreciate that information. You made it very clear and understandable. So,
Yeah,
yeah, as someone who doesn't really understand real estate, that was very easy to follow along, and I'm sure our listeners will appreciate that.
for sure.
But I had a question about the actual real estate properties that you own. Is you mentioned that it's site specific. So, are your most of your real estate properties around the area where you're from, or do you have any properties that are maybe across the country or in another state or things like that?
So my residentials are all in Oklahoma City, where I'm based out of now,
Hmm.
because residential properties require more management, more
Hmm.
hands-on oversight. Even if you have contractors working for you, even if you have a property manager working for you, it's extremely difficult to manage a rental, especially once there's turnover. Once a tenant moves out and you need to get it fixed, it's extremely difficult to manage that from like outside of the city. If you're more than 2 hours away from that house, it's extremely difficult to manage. So all my residential rentals are here in Oklahoma City. Now, when
Hmm.
you get into commercial, you get a different level of sophistication on your property manager. Those property managers are generally college educated, have extremely well done systems. Usually, the firm that's managing your property has an in house accountant, in-house, like every, like the sophistication level of someone who is a commercial property manager is generally many times higher than a residential, and because of that you can manage from outside of the city. So I have one commercial property in Oklahoma City and four in four other states, one in Indiana, one in Florida, one in Missouri, I forget the one in Virginia.
Hmm. That makes perfect sense. I guess I had a question. So you've obviously delved a lot into the real estate now, and you had to take out a lot of debt for dental school. Is there any type of regret for going to dental school, or is it all just part of the process?
That's a great question. So let me answer it two ways if you don't mind. um, if I had to do it again, knowing what I know now, there's zero chance I would have done it, because I know there's an easier way to get to where I am at right now without needing to go through dental school.
Right.
Hmm.
Now, the caveat to that is going to be I am not where I'm at right now without dental school.
Right.
It was because of dental school that I forced myself to learn about financial freedom. And also, my partners in commercial and residential are all dentists. So who's to say
Really?
I would not have had the or who's to say I would have had the
Right.
opportunities that I have now had I not gone to dental school? So
Makes
no,
sense.
no regrets whatsoever.
Yeah.
However, with the knowledge I have now, if I had to do it again,
Yeah.
there would be no need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. What, Roshan, what advantages would you say that I know you mentioned the 0% down for the doctor loan, but what other advantages would you say a dentist has when a dentist wants to get into real estate versus just the average Joe, if any?
Dentists are like bankers' wet dreams.
Fair enough.
They salivate over us. Well,
Yeah.
dentists historically make a lot of money,
Hmm.
and typically are, even with bad money management, tend to do extremely well compared to the average American.
Sure.
And the ability to service debt is quite optimal for a lot of bankers. I think having your license and the fact that you are a dentist makes it easier to approach banks and be bankable.
Right.
uh, and a perfect example of this is I bought my first real estate transaction was actually for 8 houses at one time, and I
Wow.
did not have, I was an owner, right? So I didn't have a W 2, I didn't have a salary, and I
Right.
didn't even have a tax return. I was 8 months into my ownership and I
Right.
hadn't filed my first year of taxes. And I got a loan on those 8 houses on a commercial loan. because a bank believed in me because I was a dentist.
Right.
Right.
If I was just a normal real estate investor, there's no way a bank would have lent me money as a self-employed business
Makes
owner.
sense. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of leeway, it sounds like, with the few letters we have behind our name to be able to have the financial opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Regardless of whether you want to continue doing dentistry for the rest of your life or for a shorter period of time, I always say it doesn't it should a dentist should only it should only be 10 years or less for a dentist to achieve financial freedom. And I was fortunate enough to do it in 6 years. But really, that's a dentist, not an average person, because of those letters behind our names that open up doors that the average Joe would not have access to.
For
Hmm.
sure. And Roshan, as we're closing here, what kind of inspired you to? It seems like with the situation you were given, I guess I would have the idea of maybe going like brick and mortar, like opening up dental offices as opposed to real estate and kind of leveraging real estate in that fashion. What kind of was that an idea you had at all, or you just wanted to completely disassociate from that industry, the industry?
Okay, so this will be a good one for your listeners, I believe, and you guys as well.
Hmm.
Dentistry will make you more money than real estate. If you go that route and you open up multiple practices, you will become wealthier than me. You'll become wealthier than most real estate investors. Dentistry, especially when you open up multiple practices and you do it successfully and you do it well, if you have that entrepreneur bone in your body, you're going to be wealthier off of that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, for me, is dentists are extremely stubborn, hard-headed, and tend to be hard to work with and hire and manage. And a house doesn't talk back.
I
That
like that.
yeah, that makes sense. So as we
So
close
if
here,
I had to manage 50 dentists or if I have to manage 50 houses, I know which one I'm picking, even
right?
if that's not the most financially prudent move.
Yeah. A property manager sounds like it's a lot harder in the dental field than in real estate.
Yeah,
So,
100%.
as we close here, Roshan, do you have any final advice for dental students that want to transition into real estate? Any general opinions or expertise you have?
Yeah, I would say never think about actually transitioning. Your goal shouldn't be to necessarily change careers or change jobs. I think it's a fine goal to have is trying to achieve financial freedom. Because let's say you're a dentist and you want to open up a cosmetic, only practice or a med spa kind of style practice or an implant only practice. The idea behind financial freedom is that it gives you options and choice. So you can become the exact kind of dentist you want to be if that is a certain kind of dentist, or in my case, you can become the kind of dentist that I want to be, which is a volunteer. I go and shadow and not excuse me, not shadow. I go and volunteer and have people shadow me as a volunteer dentist, things like that.
Right.
Hmm.
And so, what it really needs to be is don't have your goal as I want to transition to real estate because that's the
For
wrong
sure.
goal. Your goal should be I want to have financial freedom so that I have choices. And then when I have choices and I can choose the kind of dentistry I want, for example, I want a fee for service office. If your income, your dental income, doesn't need to be necessary for you to have the lifestyle you have, you're able to make your money from other sources of,
Right.
and you can go fee for service and do the kind of dentistry you want to do. And then when you're happy doing it, the kind of dentistry you want to do, you're going to become an even more excellent clinician
Right.
and practitioner. So yeah,
Yeah.
my thing would be, hey, just don't think about transitioning. Think about financial freedom. Start at the end. Envision your perfect ideal life, figure out what that's going to take, and work backwards to achieve it.
Sweet.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, that's great advice, Roshan. We really appreciate having you on, and I feel like all our listeners will really enjoy this one just because it's so different than the type of content we have. But we really appreciate or respect your grind and appreciate you taking the
For
time to
sure,
talk
man.
to us. Thank you again, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
thanks for having me on.